ensure effective regulatory frameworks, and facilitate funding for national programs. Promote consistent application of standards in all districts. Develop and ensure proper use of e-MIS systems, so proper use of data and management systems. If those systems aren't in place, see if there's a possibility of engaging those systems or setting up those systems. And provide training and information materials. And one of those key areas is to develop and ensure use of a curriculum. If there isn't a curriculum in place, it's very difficult to engage teachers often in the process of education around WASH, because oftentimes teachers are required to follow the curricula that are in place at the school level. So at the district level, again, we follow the same pattern. You want to raise awareness around decision makers and establish WASH in Schools Committee. Again, it's important to make sure that you're not just engaging government on a superficial level, that there's actually buy-in from the government and that there's a district body in place that can help take responsibility for the program during and after the activities are complete. Ensure that national guidelines are reflected in the district plans. So that's to ensure that there's coherency between what is at the national level and what you're trying to do at the district level. Understand and provide expertise. So what I mean here is that the district level, they often know who the local contractors are, and they can help them to identify how those contractors can be engaged. Develop locally appropriate plans based on climatic conditions, soil conditions, poverty, disease burden. Tap into existing funding and advocate for additional funding. Develop systems for oversight. Again, this is pointing out issues of accountability, making sure that the district stakeholders are accountable for conditions at the schools, or that they understand what the conditions are and can hold the teachers accountable, depending on where the accountability lies. Monitor ongoing conditions and provide training. And then at the local level, you need to mobilize support from the key stakeholders there, which is teachers, pupils, families, school management committees, CBOs, chiefs, local leaders. Create a coordinating committee. Establish existing conditions, define a set of targets, policies, and procedures and how they will be applied, plan improvements, and consult technology experts, establish funding, new infrastructure, rehabilitation, and behavior change, to monitor ongoing conditions and provide training to local artisans, teachers, pupils, and parents. So that's just an outline of all the steps for the key steps for setting up a program. And I think it's important in the plan that you set up to touch on all of these components and make sure that there's a plan in place for how to methodically engage at the national, district, and local levels. I just saw that Carlos asked a question, and I apologize if I can't get all the questions at once because I'm not looking at the little chat box, but he asked, what point do we engage the education sector? And I would say that you have to engage the education sector throughout, from the beginning. And I think that that's maybe an important take-home message for this, that when you're planning a program, all of these stakeholders need to be engaged from the beginning of the program. They need to be engaged in the planning and the execution of the program. Otherwise, there won't be that buy-in. The education sector in particular needs to be engaged with regards to the curriculum, with regards to standards, and with regards to targeting, so that the district stakeholders will be the ones that will may be able to point out which schools are in the most need of improvement. Okay, so moving on. The Washington School Standards. This is the WHO UNICEF document that you were able to look at over the past week. It's, I think, a very useful document. It provides minimum conditions for providing a healthy environment for children, teachers, and staff at school, and it's useful for developing or refining national standards, setting local district targets, identifying schools most in need, ensuring that new schools meet these criteria, and implement realistic action plans. And it covers a number of areas, from water supply, hygiene promotion, sanitation, control of vector-borne disease, cleaning, waste disposal, and food storage and preparation. And I think that a lot of what I hear about the standards is people say, well, these are very high standards, and I think that's true. I think it's very difficult for schools in low-income settings to reach these standards, but I think they still are the standards that you're trying to achieve. And I think one of the difficult things about the standards, or the useful thing at the same time, is that it's hard to know which ones should be done first. And I think that that's where the document can be very useful, that the document can be a starting place for engagement with the different stakeholders, the local teachers, the teachers, the parents, the district level stakeholders, the national level stakeholders. It's useful to use that document as a way to say, okay, now what, in our specific context, what is our priority? What do we want to do first? What do we want to do second? What do we want to do third? And I think it's okay when you use this document to say, okay, here are all the standards we want to reach, but it's going to be a phased approach. That first we want to get these, achieve this, and then we want to achieve this, and then we want to achieve the third thing. So I'll go through some of the different guidelines of the standards in the next maybe 20 minutes. And I want to point out that there are obviously different types of schools, and this is obvious, but different schools will, again, require different types of support and then have different standards that need to be reached. So public schools, private schools have different levels of funding and resources. Primary and secondary schools will require different types of infrastructure, different types of behavior change. Day or boarding schools require different levels of access. Urban, peri-urban, and rural schools will have different technology requirements and constraints. And of course, whether the school is a girls, boys, or mixed school will have implications for the different types of technology used to reach the standards. But the standards are the same throughout. So within the Washington Schools document, there are guidelines that are the goals for a specific area, and then indicators which provide benchmarks that reflect current understanding of appropriate levels of service required to create and maintain healthy school environments. And they help to assess existing situations, plan new facilities, monitor progress, and monitor ongoing maintenance. In the document, there's a short-term checklist that I think is very useful, just to think about basic components that need to be achieved in any school. Gender-specific sanitation facilities, water and soap for hand washing, safe drinking water from a protected groundwater source, a fence to keep the school clean and safe, and hygiene promotion. So guideline 1, water quality, there are 5 indicators. There should be microbiological quality of drinking water. Usually that's tested by a laboratory. There should be treatment of drinking water. And in the technology session, we'll talk about the different types of treatment that can be used at school. But it can include chlorine, filter technology, in some cases boiling. You should ensure that there's chemical and radiological quality of drinking water. Again, that's tested through a lab. There should be acceptability of the drinking water, and that's in terms of smell or taste. And that there should be water for other purposes, water that's not of drinking water quality that can be used for cleaning, laundry, or sanitation. So for water quantity, there's our basic water quantities, things that we need to have at the school in terms of drinking, cleaning, and hand hygiene. And for day schools, our target is 5 liters per child per day. And that may be more during the dry season, during the hot season, because children are more likely to drink. And at boarding schools, the target is 20 liters per child per day. And again, these targets may be high in some of the marginal areas that you're working, but I think it's important to set a standard, whether it's 3 liters or 2 liters or 5 liters, and make sure you figure out how to achieve that standard. And then, of course, when you have other different types of sanitation facilities, there are additional quantities that are needed. For flush toilets, you see that there's a lot of water needed. For core flush, you need 1.5 to 3 liters per pupil per day. And for anal cleansing, you need 1 to 2 liters per pupil per day. In a recent site visit that I did in northern Kenya, we found that there were beautiful new latrines for girls and for boys, but they weren't being used because there was absolutely no water for anal cleansing, and it was in a Muslim area. And so I think, again, this is really important to look at what are the needs, and it was very easy to find when we talked to children, what did they need from the latrines in order to use them. And the only thing they needed was water, and they didn't have that. So perhaps that should have been the first thing that was done instead of the sanitation facility. Year-round, and I think that's important because a lot of times the programs will maybe put in small rainwater tanks, and that's useful for the rainy season, but doesn't do anything for the dry season in areas where there is seasonality of rainfall. And those water points should be reliable with soap or suitable alternative at the critical points for hand washing and after defecation and before cooking perhaps. The reliable drinking water point is accessible for staff and school children, including those with disabilities at all times. 1 shower is available for 20 users in a boarding school, and laundry facilities are available with soap and detergent. For hygiene promotion, we think of this as correct use and maintenance of water and sanitation facilities is ensured through sustained hygiene promotion. Water and sanitation facilities are used as a resource for improved hygiene behaviors. The indicators are that hygiene education is included in the school curriculum. Positive hygiene behaviors, including correct use and maintenance of facilities, are systematically promoted. And that may include establishing roles and responsibilities for who cleans when, and that could be a duty roster that's posted at the school that children are responsible for filling out and teachers are responsible for checking. And 3, facilities and resources enable staff and school children to practice behaviors and control disease transmission. Guideline number 5 is toilets, and we mean sufficient, accessible, private, secure, clean, and culturally appropriate toilets provided for school children and staff. In terms of numbers, you'll have to consult your the national standards that are in your country, but internationally, the guidelines speak of 1 latrine per 25 girls and 1 female staff, and then also 1 toilet and 1 urinal per 50 boys and 1 male staff. And toilets should be accessible to all and not locked during the school day. Boys and girls toilets should be separate and should be far enough away from the school grounds that children aren't teased when they go and they aren't visible from the classrooms if possible. But again, not too far because that also poses a safety issue in some areas. Toilets need to provide privacy and security. Toilets are appropriate to the local and cultural conditions and age and gender appropriate and accessible for children with disabilities. Toilets are hygienic to use and easy to clean. That's important because you can make a great toilet, but if it gets dirty quickly and is never cleaned, then it won't be used. Toilets have nearby convenient hand washing facilities with water and soap, and cleaning and maintenance routine is in operation. And that, again, that's about a duty roster and having accountability in place at the school level, controlled at the school level. The indicators are that the density of vectors in the school is minimized, and in this case, we could mean flies. There are few flies around the latrines. We know that flies are vectors of disease because they land in the latrines and collect feces on their feet. School children and staff are protected from potentially disease-transmitting vectors, and vectors are prevented from contact with school children and staff. And I think it's especially important if there's a kitchen that there's vector control in kitchen facilities.